Oh, hi. I know, the garage still looks like a tornado went through it, but we'll get there. Before I take on the garage project though, I have something else I need to accomplish first. For some backstory, I started woodworking with the idea that I could build furniture for my family that was of much better quality for around the same money as store-bought pressboard options. Now I think we can all agree that's only partially true. As friends and neighbors started to learn of my woodworking journey, one asked if I would be interested in building them a very special cabinet. Now we'll talk about the cabinet more later and it'll be featured in an upcoming video. It really is a unique build. But that project begins with building a tool. Specifically, a router jig. You might say, but Bill, you can just buy one of these on Amazon. It'll be at your door in a couple of days. Yeah, you could do that, but the sub $100 router jigs on Amazon don't appear to be very well made according to the reviews, and the Woodpeckers version looks amazing if you want to part with around $320, so we're going to build it. I have some red oak and T-track laying around the shop, and I think I can build a solid variable router jig that costs more in time than dollars. Here I'm cutting 4 pieces of T-track at 17 3/4 inches long. I like to file my cut ends so I don't cut myself or get one of those really fine metal slivers that are hard to remove and then they hurt for days.
I'm not like other people. I can't stand pain. It hurts me.
Here I am using the drill press to drill a hole closer to the cut end, which will be the end that slides in the perpendicular T-track. You should use a drill bit that fits in your T-track's existing holes without being too big. I laid the hole out 1 inch from the end and center of the T-track, then used a center punch to keep the bit from wandering. Next I'm going to drill a screw head relief on the inside of the T-track. Use a drill bit that's the same diameter as a screw head you'll be using. Be very careful here to not drill all the way through the T-track though. I used some random pieces of 1x red oak as a base for the guide rails that I had laying around the shop. The species of wood doesn't really matter, but I recommend going with some type of hardwood so it stands up to use over time. My T-track measures 23 32 inch wide and the 1x red oak is 25 32. So this means I can only mill the oak up to 1/16 of an inch for flatness. Eyeballing it, this wood appears to be pretty flat, but I'm putting down pencil marks to make sure that they're all gone after a 1/32 inch pass on each side. When you mark wood for a panel like this, make sure you use the side of the pencil because the sharp pencil tip will etch the wood fibers and you'll need to plane deeper to remove the marks. And you can make this whatever size fits your needs. I don't anticipate needing anything much bigger than around 15 inches square, so my finished board length is 17 7/8 inch, which should pretty easily accommodate 15 inches at a 2 5/8 inch board width. And ideally you want 6 inches longer than your finished length so you can cut off any snipe from the planer. And the width is not as important as long as the pieces are wide enough to index themselves flat in the T-track slots and you can drill an adequate hole in them to access a 1/4 nut easily. We'll get to that part later. I wouldn't recommend going any narrower than a 2 1/4 inch board though. Again, my scrap pieces of oak worked out such that I could get 4 pieces of 2 5/8 inch wide stock. And here is where I'm ripping the oak to the final width of 2 5/8 of an inch. Here I'm squaring the ends. And then using the stop block on my miter gauge, cross-cut the boards to a final length of 17 7/8. So for this part, be sure to use a flat top grind or FTG blade. This will leave a nice flat cut to ride in the T-track. Most big box stores sell ATB blades or alternate top bevel, which will leave you with a beveled cut. This will wear out and cause a sloppy T-track fit in a short time. The inside slot on the T-track I'm using is just shy of 3/8 of an inch. I'm using a setup block to set my blade to a weak 3/16 of an inch, which should leave about a 3/8 of an inch wide tenon centered in the end of the 17 7/8 long board. I'm going to set up my miter gauge at 17 3/4 of an inch so that I can repeat an 1/8 inch cut on the end of each board, sneaking up on a perfect fit into the T-track slot. I make a cut on each side of the board, then test on the T-track. Adjust the blade just a touch higher since the tenon is too wide, then repeat the cuts. When I get that perfect fit, I should be good on all boards since they have been planed identical thicknesses. Next, I'm going to lay out my hole centers for the 1 3/4 inch hole. Then drill an 1 3/4 hole on the tenon end of each board. I centered my holes at 2 1/8 inches measured from the tenon. I made sure to flip the board and finish the holes on the opposite side once the 1/4 inch bit came through. This keeps the wood from blowing out on the side of the board that the hole saw exits. I made my slugs from a scrap piece of oak planed to the same thickness as the other boards. I used a 2-inch hole saw for the slugs because the inside diameter of the saw made a slug that fit the 1 3/4 hole drilled in the previous step perfectly. Taping the slugs from the 2-inch hole saw into a board with 1 3/4 holes worked well to cut the slugs. You don't want the slugs cut directly in half. I cut my slugs to 3/4 of an inch thick. After you cut down your slugs, it's time to glue them up. Apply glue to both the hole where the slug will fit and the rounded side of the slug. Using a flat surface, glue the slug into the hole using a square to make sure the flat part of the slug is perpendicular to the side of the board. Then clamp them together. And wipe up any squeeze out with a damp rag. If you pay close attention, there's a hint at what the next video will be about starting from this scene. It'll be obvious by the end of the video. After the glue dried, I gave all the pieces a light sand. I just hit all the pieces quick with some 180. Then, drill the 1/4 inch holes, centered from the tenon up through the slug. This is where the T-track bolt will be. I'm using a Dalmax jig to get a nice centered and straight hole. The Dalmax guide blocks measure 3.5 inches wide, so I used a 7/16 inch setup block stack on the workpiece to align the edge of the Dalmax, centering the middle 1/4 inch guide hole. The Dalmax is an awesome tool for those of us that can't or won't afford dominoes. You'll be seeing a lot of this guy in my next video, so stay tuned. I should mention that I'm not sponsored by Dalmax, I just think it's an amazing and deadly accurate tool for reasonable money. To protect the wood, I'm giving a quick coat of Rubio Monocoat Hard Wax Oil plus 2C in natural. Just mix up 3 parts oil to 1 part hardener and wipe it on. If this were a furniture project, I'd do 2 coats, but as a shop tool, 1 coat will protect it well enough. I also think the router will slide better on it with a finish. After the hard wax oil dries, it's time to install the T-track. I'm clamping both the T-track and the oak to the assembly table to make sure the 2 pieces mate together perfectly. Then I pre-drill the screw holes using a Vicks bit to further make sure the T-track secures to the oak perfectly. When all of the T-tracks are installed, loosely install the 2.5 inch T-bolts, washers, lock washers, and 1/4x20 nut. Now it's time to put it all together. Simply slide all of the pieces together with the T-track pointing inwards towards each other. Now let's see what this thing can do. This is the front panel for a piece of Nintendo furniture I'm building for a friend and neighbor. We'll do a deep dive on this project in the next video, but I will say that it is a very cool project that I was proud to be a part of, and it's a blast back to the late 80s, early 90s if you were a kid at that time begging your parents for a Nintendo action set. I've laid out where I want the Nintendo emblem to sit on this piece of 3/4 MDF. I'm going to route the recess with a 1/4 inch double flute carbide straight bit. The 1/4 inch bit fits the rounded corners of the emblem perfectly. I'm using a bushing in my trim router plunge base that requires me to add 3/16 of an inch to each side of the emblem recess because that's the measurement from the edge of the bushing to the side of the bit. I'm very carefully measuring the jig opening for the router to ride on. I get one shot at this or I'll be cutting another panel. When you tighten up the router jig nuts, you want them snug enough to guarantee they won't move, but you also don't want them He-Man tight. Then, very carefully, line up the jig on the panel and clamp it down. I like to double check my measurements after clamping to make sure it didn't move under clamping pressure. Well, no turning back now. After all that measuring, the recess was a touch too narrow. I removed one clamp and readjusted the jig. I double-checked my inside measurements, held my breath, and went forward again, extending the width of the recess ever so slightly.
Oh, baby.
I think that reaction says it all. A perfect fit. So there you have it, a variable router jig built with shop scraps. If you want to see the Nintendo cabinet video where we use the panel built at the end of this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as that video drops. I also plan on using this jig again on a future outfeed table build with an integral router lift station, so hang around for that as well. Until I see you on the next one, thanks for watching.